If you don't know what to look for, buying the wrong product to sell on Amazon can cost you thousands of dollars. But I've sold over $3 million on Amazon, and so in this video, I'm going to give you a step-by-step breakdown on exactly what I'm looking at before I pull the trigger on a product. This is going to be a super important video for you to preserve profit, conserve your account health, and buy long-term items. So I'm going to jump straight into it here and just start looking at the things that I normally look at to qualify a good product on Amazon. And by the way, I typically do it in the order that I'll put it in this video. I found it to be the fastest for my Amazon workflow. So you can literally copy this exact same workflow and be able to find winning products a lot faster, right? So let's go ahead and dive into this example here. The first thing you need to look at pretty much any Amazon listing is the price, right? So just for the sake of example, let's say we source this item for $50. It seems like at first glance, you're going to be super profitable here. You'd be making $26 in profit. But the first thing you guys need to check out for is the consistency in the price, right? So right now it is profitable. Although when we check out the Keep a chart down here, this is 20 bucks, by the way. If you're brand new to Amazon, Keep is 20 bucks, SellerAmp's 20 bucks. These are about the only two tools that you really need. This is our product research tool. But when you check out the Keep a charts down here, this is going to show you a lot about how consistent that price is on the item, right? And a lot of new beginners, they'll buy items, they'll complain about how, their prices are tanking or their prices are a lot lower than when they bought the item, right? And a lot of times it boils down to not knowing what to look at in these Keep a charts right here. So right here, we have a super classic example of an item that is way more expensive than it should be. You can see literally a couple hours ago, the price shot way up to 100 bucks. A new seller might source this listing. Somebody who doesn't really know what to look out for might check out this listing and say, hey, I can buy this item that looks good to me. But in reality, when we go ahead and check out this chart, we can see very consistently this item's been going for about $47, right? The other thing that's going to be valuable to check down here is going to SellerAmp, click 90-day average, and then you can just go ahead and click that. It's going to change your default sales price up there. And so we can see, although right now we're making $26 on the 90-day average, we're going to be losing about 38% profit, $18 per unit. And that's not exactly the business we want to be in, right? So I want to show you on the flip side of that. Let's say you're sourcing this Nike slide right here, right? Going into Christmas, could be a pretty giftable item, that kind of thing. And right now, selling for $42, we can buy them for $18. We're going to make about $9.50 profit per unit. And when we go ahead and check out the Keep a chart down here, we can see that this price, although $42 isn't necessarily where it usually belongs. You can see usually it's like 42 there. Back in the past year, it's been about $35. I'm also going to simplify that right there. So you can see the buy box price line, usually about 35, 37 bucks. So we'd want to see like, what's my worst case scenario? That's something I like to ask myself anytime I buy a product is what is my worst case scenario, right? If you've ever done like stock trading or anything like that, it's just like risk reward analysis basically. So on this, if 35 bucks is my worst case scenario, it seems like I'm still making $3.50 profit. We can also zoom out to the past year. It's going to be really interesting, especially for those of you guys who are sourcing products for Christmas coming up. If you're watching this video right after it came out, you can see again, this is very giftable type item, right? So even though the price has been at 35 bucks, maybe we're making 20% ROI. Last Christmas, everybody sold out. The price shot way up. This year, there's way less sellers on the listing and the price is staying up in our range where we're pretty profitable, right? So when we go down here, doing the same thing, we can do our 90-day average price. Go ahead and click that there. And we're actually very profitable at that 90-day average. And that's something that I like to check, right? So a specific data point that I look for here is if I'm at least a 25 to 30% ROI at my 90-day average buy box, I like to pull the trigger on those types of items. I don't always have to see that on every single one of my listings, but that just shows me that the profit is going to be a little bit more consistent than a listing like this one. Especially this one is a very drastic example of where the price was way higher on that 90-day average. We're just not making any money. So the first thing you check on every single listing is my price reasonable? And am I going to consistently be able to make sales at this price? By the way, I'll go ahead and show you a quick Keep a gem here as well. If you go to the data offers tab, we can go ahead and include historical. And if you ever are like, man, are people really paying 50 bucks or 100 bucks for this crazy item that you just found, right? On this, we can see the exact price these sellers had it for and their stock count over time, right? So we can see right here on November 3rd, this seller had it priced at $42. And on November 3rd, it looks like their stock was steadily decreasing, right? So that shows me provably right here on the Keep a chart that this item does genuinely sell for that $42 price point. And so if you want to come in here, sell it for $42, you get that nice assurance that you actually can sell it for that. The next thing you need to check when you're looking into profitable items to sell is if it sells fast enough for you, right? So I pulled up this example of a product here. Again, what we were just talking about, we see a lot of consistency in the pricing there. It's anywhere from $19 to $22, depending on what you're sourcing it for. For the sake of example, let's say you're buying this for $4, I would assume that'd be a really good item in here. And another thing that we love to see is that this item is selling over 3,000 times a month, right? And the reason why I pull up an example like this is because I'm actually going to break the rules on my profitability metrics sometimes, right? So I'm usually going to be looking for about 35% ROI or about $3 profit per unit. But if we have insane volume or if it's in a category like grocery where they can't return it, so I might even be interested in buying this product all the way down to like, a 25% ROI or so, right? So another seller who's going to be really, really strict, they might only buy it for $5, $4, whatever it is. We could go in here and, maybe we buy this for $60 $6.50, that kind of thing. We're only making $2 a bag. Hopefully this would be like with your prep costs and everything baked in. But since it's super high volume, we have way less time in between each sale for the price to go down, right? That's something that I really want you guys to remember is the more sales you have, the less risk in between each sale that you're going to make there is for the price to go down, right? So this super high volume listing, we're okay with less ROI because there's less time in between each sale. Worst case, if the price starts trending down, we can just liquidate our stock, make 20% ROI, 15% ROI, whatever's left on the listing, right? And in a grocery category, we'd be willing to go even lower than that. Comparing this to a different item, although this is still grocery, no returns, that kind of thing, we wouldn't have to worry about it. When we check out this item, you can see a lot more time is in between each sale, right? It seems like maybe recently the sales are starting to pick up and that $10 price point's a little bit more reinforced. But back here in the past, you can see there was a ton of time in between each sale. When you check out the Keep It chart right here, it's not always the end all be all, but especially on slow selling listings like this, these drops are usually just one sale on this listing, right? So if these sales are this slow, it's no wonder that the price had so much time for it to drop from $10 all the way down to like $7, right? And on a listing where that's $100 down to $70, that's a very significant financial change for your business, right? And so you can see in the past of this item, there's been a ton of just random fluctuations in the price of this item because there's so much time in between each sale. The listing is having a hard time finding kind of the price that customers want to pay. And then sellers have no choice but to move their prices all over the place and hopefully make sales where they're still profitable, right? So what I want you to remember while you're sourcing products is that it should be kind of a sliding scale between volume to profit. So this over here, I'm super happy selling this for 20%, 25% ROI, that kind of thing. The price is really not going to go anywhere. We can sell this 3,000 times a month, that kind of thing. Comparing that to this listing, there's way more time in between each sale. I'd want to be looking for at least, a 60, 70% ROI. The closer I get to about 30 sales per month is usually my cutoff. This is even below my usual cutoff. I'm usually looking for that 30 sales per month as my minimum cutoff. And if I am close to 30 sales per month, I'm usually going to look for that 60, 70% ROI, right? So it's a sliding scale. You need to have more reward to take the risk of letting the price go down, basically. So the next thing I want to talk about here is the impact that competition can have on your listings, right? So I get asked all the time, how many sellers is too many on a listing? How many sellers should I be competing with? And we're going to jump into that on this listing here. Just real quick, I want to mention, if you haven't already jumped into the Amazon Launchpad, this is our free course and community on Amazon arbitrage. My goal is for it to be the best free resource about Amazon arbitrage. So you can check this out. It's going to be in the description down below. You get a free Discord, 3 hours of video content. You get 6 downloadables. There's a spreadsheet with like 1,800 auto-ungating ASINs. So you can see what brands you can get approved for. And so go ahead and check this out down below. It's completely free. Let's go ahead and jump back into these slides over here because I want to talk about competition with you guys, right? So a lot of people ask me, how many sellers is too many to compete with? To me, that is the wrong question. It's about the trend of sellers. And I want to give you a really good example as to what that means, right? So on this Nike slide listing right here, we can see a couple things. Number one, the sales rank is shooting up, which kind of makes sense. It's a flip-flop kind of product. Maybe you're going to be getting it as a Christmas gift. We saw that on this last slide listing over here, but it seems like as summer has kind of started to end, that sales rank starting to go up, right? We're seeing a little bit of recovery with holiday gift season, that kind of thing. But as that sales rank shot up, we also saw the new seller count shoot up, right? And so right now we're at almost an all-time high recently. See, pretty much matching the recent all-time high on this 90-day graph here. And so when the demand is lower and the supply is higher, going back to your middle school economics, right? The equilibrium price has to drop. And so on a listing like this, we're already starting to see that price drop. I would expect to see this price continue to drop. One thing that's really interesting that I like to do is comparing it to the price that it was last time there were this many sellers on the listing. So last time there were this many sellers on a listing, it was the middle of July. We had a ton of demand to keep that price kind of artificially high. And then previously, the time before that, when we had 50 sellers on it, the price was $41. It was the beginning of spring, so a lot of people were going to buy it, and then the price was able to stay a little bit higher, right? So when I look at this graph, seeing an increase in sellers isn't the most risky thing here because the price was able to stay decently high last time we did have that many sellers, but we do still see a decrease in price even as that new seller count starts to drop, and we're leaving the season where these are going to be super popular. You can see last kind of holiday season, the sales rank just kept shooting up, which shows me that it's not the most giftable type of item. It's not going to be the fastest seller during the holiday season, and so it could be a little bit risky. When you compare that though to a listing like this one right here, it's an advent calendar. It's going to make a lot of sense that we might see more people sell this product. You'd be kind of dumb to be trying to sell an advent calendar in the middle of, August, July, that kind of thing. And what's really interesting is on a listing like this, we can zoom out to the full year. We see a huge increase in the number of new sellers, which usually would be a runaway, don't ever sell this product. There's too much competition is what a lot of people would be kind of afraid of. But when we check out this listing here, we saw basically an equal rise in the number of sales that were happening on this listing, right? Which makes sense. We're getting closer and closer to Christmas. People are going to start buying these more and more. And so the demand is there to kind of meet the supply, right? The last one, we didn't really have any changes in demand to meet the increase in supply. This one, we see a big increase in supply, but we also see a massive increase in demand, right? So we've gone from, over the last couple months here, we've gone from like 100K in grocery, which is not a fast selling product at all. And now we're all the way down to like 2,000 sales in grocery, which is over 1,000 sales a month on SellerAmp there. We can also see that last Christmas, this advent calendar right here, I think even lower than, it was in the top 1,000 basically grocery products on Amazon, which is going to be a super fast seller. Last year, we saw a huge increase in sellers, but the price stayed up because the demand was so much higher, right? So don't ask yourself how much competition is too much. Oh, there's 50 sellers on this listing, I can't sell it. Oh, there's 5 sellers on this listing, I can't sell it. It's much more so about what happened last time there was this number of sellers, and do I think that this listing can allow for the number of sellers that's currently on the listing, right? So if it's artificially high, there's nothing that's going to keep the price high. You're definitely going to see a decrease in price unless you see something like this, huge increase in demand along with supply. So if you're following along with an example product at this point, you know that the price is stable on this listing, similar to this listing we looked at here. You also know that you have enough profit or ROI based on the volume of your listing. So it's a super fast seller. You can look for lower, slow sellers got to be higher, right? And then you also have checked and made sure that the competition isn't going to make the price of your item drop, right? So there's a couple other things that we want to check before we go ahead and pull the trigger on this listing here. And I know it seems like a lot when we're breaking it down into this video, but it's really going to become second nature for you, especially as you start sourcing more and more products, right? So the next thing we want to check for is to make sure that you can actually get a piece of the pie, right? A lot of new sellers, and I made this mistake when I was an early on seller. I lost about $5,000 because I didn't know this mistake that I'm about to show you right now. And what that mistake is looking into the buy box statistics down here on SellerAmp and confirming that you yourself can make sales on this product, right? So I pull up this example of a product where we can see that of the last 90 days, about 99% of the sales have been hogged by Amazon, right? So if you hop into a listing like this and you see one seller, maybe it's Amazon, maybe it's, just a really big high feedback seller. They've got 95% of the buy box rotation. That's going to be a good sign that they're artificially hogging the buy box, whether they own the brand, it's Amazon themselves in this case. You want to avoid listings like that. Kind of a good cutoff number I like to look for is about 75% or higher. Is going to be kind of a red flag in my mind. Another thing you can do is check out the Keepa chart down here, and up on the top, it's going to show you who's getting the buy box when. And so in this case, we can see basically anytime Amazon's in stock, they're going to pretty much be hogging the buy box the whole time. You might see other listings where a certain seller might be in stock, but they're not getting the buy box for whatever reason, right? So that shows me that the buy box is rotating. So for example, when we go back over to these slides we were looking at earlier, if we head down to the buy box statistics, you can see a much more even distribution of sales split between a ton of different sellers here. You can see good old Funded My College there is a classic storefront name. They're getting some sales on this listing. Lots of other seller feedback counts and seller names that indicate that you don't necessarily have to be a really big seller to end up getting any buy box rotation on this listing, right? Another thing that you want to look out for if you're planning to merchant fulfill your products where you're going to ship directly to the customer, you can go ahead and enter type down here. I'm just going to go ahead and simplify the rest of this stuff right here. And so when we do this, we can go ahead and sort by who's winning the most sales and what kind of fulfillment were they. So in this case, a lot of the top sellers are all FBA sellers. We have to get a little bit down the list before we start seeing some FBM sales though. And so when I look at this chart right here, we can definitely make a bunch of sales on this as third-party sellers, but we might have a little bit of trouble making sales as merchant fulfilled sellers. As you can see, we have to scroll pretty far down to start seeing those merchant fulfilled offers there. The other thing you want to think about in terms of making sure you can get a piece of the pie is avoiding listings where the brand themselves is already selling it. So for example, you can see this brand is called Emma. You can also see that seller name down here on SellerAmp. If you go ahead and scroll through these, where it's really interesting is there's quite a few other sellers on this listing. I really think that's a bad idea to sell on any listing that the brands themselves sell on. And so I would not be surprised to see all 44 of these other sellers who besides Emma at some point are going to get an IP complaint where they get kicked off the listing. It's well within the brand's right to kick you off a listing if they don't want you to sell that product. So it's our job as sellers to avoid listings where the brand is selling it, avoiding listings where there's like consistently only one seller. And so those are a lot of the things that I'm going to look out for in terms of keeping my account health safe. And by the way, if you're ever unsure if a brand is going to IP complain or not, there's this super cool free resource. Seller Journal Greenlight's just a free website, and you can go ahead and type in a brand name. So like Kong, super infamous for being an IP complaining brand. When we zoom in, we can see that this brand's well known for taking legal actions against sellers of their product. So it's just one other kind of vote of confidence you can get if you've never sold a brand before. It's a good idea just to check a database like that. You can also use something like IP Alert if you just want to have it embedded on your screen there. But it's really, really important to make sure you're not listing items where the brand themselves are on the listing. The last couple things you want to do to validate that your product is legit is make sure that you have the exact same product. So for example, I've got just like a vitamin product pulled up. Something I like to do, especially with grocery and vitamins and that kind of stuff. A lot of times there'll be like new packaging on a different website. So for example, here's that product over on Walgreens.com. It looks the same at first glance, but what I always like to do, especially if it's my first time sourcing a product, I'm going to go ahead and go over here and check out the nutrition facts. If it's a food product, the label, if you can see like a UPC in the picture, that's even better. You can match like the UPC to something on an Amazon listing. In this case, I don't think we've got the UPC, but you could just match it up to the UPC UPC that's showing on SellerAmp up here. Like I was saying, the other thing you want to do is make sure that this picture looks the same. So I like to just memorize these little percentages. So I'm just gonna say like 25, 26, 32, right? So if I see 25, 26, 32, perfect. We probably have the same exact product here. We just want to make sure that, especially if it's like updated packaging or anything like that, you don't want someone to be taking the wrong supplement or the ingredients changed, and that can cause some really big headaches for people, especially if it's like ingestible products. You want to make sure that you're keeping the customer safe on that kind of stuff, right? So always confirm that the nutrition label, the UPC, all that kind of stuff is the same. So now that we've broken that all down, those are the most important things that I look for when I'm sourcing products. There's a few more like nitpicky things. I also made a very specific checklist in terms of ROI thresholds, where to check and make sure your sites are legit. It's about 2 pages. You can run any sample leads that you do find through that checklist. Make sure you found a good winner. Again, that's down below in that launch pad that I was talking about earlier. If you guys do have any questions, comments, feel free to drop those down below as well. Super happy to answer those for you guys. If you did get value, hit subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And I am picking one random subscriber for the month of November to do a free one-on-one consult with. I'm super excited to chat with you guys, see who wins that. But I really appreciate you guys watching this video. I hope you're having a great Q4 prep season, and I will see you guys next time.